The Pete Souza Show. It is a Friday edition. We are presented by Slovacics. Thank you so much to Slovacics and to everybody that's making this possible. We got Scotty Swingler back in the studio. We got Corey Dickman coming up with picks. And like I said, we're presented by Slovacics. We're getting set to do a live show out at Slovacics on the 18th of December, I think, which may be coming as a bit of a surprise to Scotty and the folks back in the studio. But that's a fact. I mean, we're coming down the pike for that. I talked to Ali Kadlabar, News 10 Zone in Central Texas, about possibly appearing on that show with us because she is the Czech queen. So if we're going to do anything out at Slovacics, we got to do it with Ali. I'd be pumped, looking forward to doing that out there. Had a hoops game last night in Fort Worth. TCU losing to Xavier losing to TCU was like part of the Big East, Big 12 battle. All I can think of is the Big East ACC Challenge. That's all I wanted to say all night because that's what I did when I was a kid. That's what I watched. But yeah, now I called the game last night. It was a lot of fun. TCU is a team who they always came into the season. You knew they were going to run up and down the floor. The last 2 years, they've led the country in fast break points. And Jamie Dixon has had this thing where he has taken holdovers from the previous year's roster. At least he's done it over the past 3 years. You know, you bring in a freshman like Mike Miles or somebody. This year they got 4 freshmen and a few transfers. And rather than bringing in like a veteran-laden roster, they now have a bit of a youth movement. And point blank, Jamie Dixon was asked before the season, and he brought it up to us yesterday at shoot-around. Hey, how your team is new. You have young guys this year for the first time in a while. And he basically was like, it was financial. And that's a window into what's going on now in college basketball with recruiting and money being involved. You know, they had hit their limit of big-time recruits that they could get out of the portal. They'd hit their limit financially. So what do you do after that? You get freshmen that are good, not great, you know? And so they actually have, though, a couple of great freshmen. So I guess that I go back on that. But freshmen are affordable, more so than, say, a big-time talent that's in the portal, right? And so they have a couple freshmen, this young man, David Punch, who's really good, and this other guy, Micah Robinson, who – Michael Robinson drains a huge three early in the game for TCU, comes right into the game, a freshman, and he does like a little three sign, and he turns around and he says something to the Xavier bench, and boom, gets teed up right away. Which I was like, I guess you can't do that, but I don't care. I think you should be able to do it. But yeah, TCU has some young players. They ended up winning the game last night. The funniest part, or the most alarming part of the game for me was, you know, we're calling the game for ESPN. Jamie Dixon's right in front of us, and something happened, and there was a loose ball that went out of bounds. It was like, who touched it? You know, we have monitors right in front of us, and Jamie Dixon is right in front of us, halfway up half court, like outside of the coach's box towards the scorer's table, and he turns to us, and he's like, who did it hit? And right away, I get so nervous. You know, it's a coach yelling at me, basically. And I'm not going to tell him who it hit. One, because I get nervous. I can't even operate under those conditions if they're foreign. You know, we can be counting down to a show and I can have no idea if anything's going to work and I can be cool as a cucumber. But if a coach like Jamie Dixon turns around and yells at me and says, hey, who did that touch last? I get nervous right away. And of course I talked about it on the air. So it was a funny moment. Got to work with my man, Brendan Manzer, who does a terrific job. That was fun. I feel like I'm getting kind of in a rhythm with that. Got another game Saturday night, St. Mary's at Utah in Salt Lake. So I'm pumped about that, leaving for that today. The news of the day that I just have got to get into, that it's all I've been thinking about, and I'm sure you can guess, is the Bill Belichick situation. So Bill Belichick, who, you know, I'm sure several NFL fans of franchises in the NFL are like, man, is Bill Belichick going to come through and save the day for our organization? And I know Cowboys fans are thinking that. We had Matt Mosley on the show last week, who sort of debunked any possibility that could come to fruition, simply because Jerry Jones is somewhat, not somewhat, he is territorial with his Cowboys and being the owner. He has a certain amount of things he feels falls within that the rights of being the owner. And you know, they do. I mean, clearly he's shown us he's been able to do whatever he wants. Unfortunately for Cowboys fans, the product on the field has not been a winning one, but the Cowboys make a ton of money. And it's extremely successful as a business model. But you get a coach like Bill Belichick in there, and he's not going to want to deal with any of Jerry's nonsense. And the fact that he interviewed for the North Carolina job, which is now open because Mac Brown was fired on November 26th. By the way, Mac Brown was there for 6 seasons. That's, I guess, since 2018 or 2019. So that's crazy. Now, Mac Brown was 73 years old. And you might say, okay, that's too old to be coaching in college. Well, Bill Belichick is 72. So Belichick, these are sources told ESPN that Belichick who spent his career in the NFL, wants to coach again and is open to listening people at the college level. So Belichick, he's far and away the biggest name to surface in the North Carolina search. I mean, last week we were talking about Matt Campbell. You know, somebody was like, whoa, that'd be a great hire. You know, now we're talking about Bill Belichick. Now, I was just watching the other night on the NFL Network, and this is like an old school NFL Network thing. It's like a top 10 of coaches who were better off in college than they were in the NFL. Guys like Cam's buddy, Dick McPherson, who was an amazing coach at Syracuse. Before that, UMass. And then he went to the New England Patriots and just like it didn't work. Lou Holtz was another one, right? He went to the Jets after he had coached after he coached Minnesota and before Notre Dame, he coached for the Jets, and that was not good. Nick Saban, talk about a time machine. If you could hop in a time machine and hear what people were saying about Nick Saban, the coach, in 2005, 2006, this is post-national championship at LSU, now in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins. People were taking massive dumps all over that guy as a coach. Like, that did not go well. And, you know, hey, here he is, now probably one of the most celebrated coaches of all time across sports. But college or the NFL was not his bag. The NFL has been Bill Belichick's bag. And Bill Belichick's ability to navigate the NFL. By the way, you could, there's always the people that have he couldn't have done any of that, the 6 Super Bowls without Tom Brady, right? And you're like, okay, like the two definitely needed each other. I mean, Brady went on and won another Super Bowl. Bill Belichick did not. So if you're looking for the last word in that argument, maybe you give it to Tom Brady. But Bill Belichick, he actually did, you look at his career in the NFL. First of all, he's a son of a college football coach. His dad was a special teams coach at the Naval Academy for many years. And that's actually, how Bill Belichick got to know Bill Parcells, because Parcells knew his dad. And Parcells worked with Belichick for many years with the New York Giants. And the two obviously had an amazing professional relationship. Personally, there was some stuff, but I think everything's like, copacetic between the two of them now. But Bill Belichick was an NFL assistant. He was in college, I think, a year here, a year there, maybe. But far and away, for the most part, an NFL assistant. And then he ascends into the head coach of the Cleveland Browns and was the last coach of the Browns before they left Cleveland. Obviously, we know what happens there. He gets fired when the Browns leave. He got fired because they went to Baltimore. And when they went to Baltimore, I forget exactly if he was fired or not, but he parts ways with the Browns. He ends up working for Bill Belichick at the Jets, at the Patriots. And then he goes to Bill Belichick when Belichick goes to the Jets, was supposed to take Belichick's job when Belichick left the Jets, did not want to take the job because he thought the Jets sucked. and he had a pretty good beat on that one, right? Like that was when the Johnson family had bought the Jets, like in the late 90s, 1999 around, because Leon Hess had died, the owner of the Jets. So Belichick then ends up at the Patriots with Robert Kraft, and history is written. None of what I've mentioned so far have included Bill Belichick coaching a college football program. So I'm going to tell you why it could work. First of all, by the way, does anybody think that his new girlfriend is behind this at all? Like anybody, like, is that like at all? Like, because that's what I thought, like just for a second, because maybe I'm polluted with like enough stuff out there. This goes back to just liking romantic comedies and having a bunch of guys that I've been very close with whose significant others have gotten them into crazy situations, whether it's been like work or personal or whatever, you know. Hey man, we've all been whipped, right? So that's just one thing where it's like, wow, is this guy just like whipped? And maybe his girlfriend's like, oh my God, Bill, it will be so much fun. You coach in college. I love Chapel Hill. My girls are there. That's something that definitely crossed my mind. All right, let's get that out because that doesn't exist. That's in my mind, which is like silly talk. The reality is Bill Belichick wants to get back into coaching. No better opportunity to actually teach than at the college level. The issue is all the stuff that comes with it. Now, in reality, if he were ever to take a college coaching job, I think we've seen a couple things. First of all, this last year for Belichick, whether it's been on the Manning cast, particularly, I would imagine his work with Pat McAfee almost opens this door a little wider because he now is becoming more of a relatable figure in pop culture. I mean, you could even say the stuff with his girlfriend makes him more relatable to like the younger generation that we're talking about, the type of person that will be playing for Bill Belichick in college. So he does have like a lane there, which he did not have before, which he has created over the course of the past year, where it's like, okay, Bill Belichick is able to connect with some of these younger people, whereas a year before when you look at him or 2 years before when he's coaching in the NFL or just a year now, you would have never imagined that he would have had that sort of juice with younger people. They would have just known him as this amazing coach. The thing is about right now, when you look at everything that's happening, you hear a lot of people say, well, he's not made where he could be a college coach. Like he's not in a situation where he has the charisma. He's not like a marketing guy, which a lot of these college football coaches are. But, on the other side of that, like when you think about the college football player and who they're made up of today, and I just as an example, like Brian Kelly, where Bill Belichick is like, okay, I'm not sure if I like him. He's different, and he's like a Yoda when it comes to football. So like there's a glowing reverence and respect that we have for a guy like Bill Belichick. Brian Kelly's just like unlikable, right? But he's still year in, year out, gets amazing players to come play at LSU. Let me be the first to tell you, from knowing what I know and having people in my life who I have in my life that are involved with this kind of stuff, they're not going to LSU because of Brian Kelly. They're going to LSU because of the folks that work for Brian Kelly that are recruiting these guys. And because a lot of the bells and whistles and amenities that come with playing football for LSU. Sure, Brian Kelly's a part of the process. There's no question about it. But they're not running to play for a personality like Brian Kelly's. In fact, I would think that some of these players would not want to play for a guy like Brian Kelly. So you even look like, from a personality standpoint, it's almost like I think he would be like a detriment. But he still gets amazing players to go to LSU. So that, I think, takes care of that. I think that Bill Belichick, if he has the right kind of guys around him, like let's say Gerard Mayo gets fired, right? And Gerard Mayo goes with Bill Belichick, and now he's the linebackers coach or defensive coordinator for wherever Bill Belichick is coaching. Let's say North Carolina in this case. Like Gerard Mayo could probably be a terrific recruiter. Like think about it in that respect, right? Like how amazing would that be for someone like Gerard Mayo to be recruiting, be in the living room of some of these young kids? Another thing to consider, having been recruited, like the reason I went to the school I did to play football was because my mom wanted me to go there. Like they like parents are huge in this process. They meet the coaches. They're on campus. That's a lot of times if you go all the way back to like a coach like Bill McCartney when he was at Colorado, when he got all the guys that he got to come play at Colorado. You know, McCartney was a big time, a guy who was involved with God and the Bible. So he would go into these homes in, let's say, South Central Los Angeles, and he would sit down with a mom who had an amazing vigor as far as like religion and God was concerned. And, you know, there's a connection there. And Bill McCartney would, you know, you recruit the parents almost more so than you recruit the kids themselves. So that's something to consider. Like how many parents that have seen Bill Belichick, sets of parents or single parents, and know all the success that comes with the Patriots, six Super Bowls, like I mentioned, like that's a guy you trust. And it's like, okay, my kid could play for him. Nick Saban was Bill Belichick's old defensive coordinator when the two of them were in Cleveland together. And like Nick Saban he's not like this amazing, charismatic guy. He's another person who, when you look at where he is now, he's kind of opening himself up now in a more attractive light to connect with kids and the younger generation. But clearly he didn't need this like amazing, flowery, overly charismatic persona to be successful in college. So with all that said, I believe that Bill Belichick could go to North Carolina. I think he could do a great job. I don't know that he's like cut out for it long term, because for all the reasons that a guy like, this is like the wild card, and it's not even a wild card anymore. It's a reality. Like when you look at Tony Bennett leaving Virginia, Jay Wright leaving Villanova, Nick Saban leaving Alabama. I'm forgetting all kinds of other big names who have left the sport because of the condition, or their sports, because of the condition that it's in today, right? Because of the condition that college sports are in, and the major changes that are taking place with college football as far as NIL and recruiting is concerned. Like the dark side and the underbelly of all this is like, does Bill Belichick want to get in the transfer portal and chase quarterbacks? Maybe, because that's what he did, if you think about it, when he was coaching for, let's see, I keep getting these phone calls, man. I'll have to call my mom back. There's a whole story behind that. But yeah, she's doing okay right now. We like maybe Bill Belichick's comfortable doing that, right? Like chasing free agents like he did when he was GM. Or the last thing I'll say is maybe this is just a strategic move by Bill Belichick, right? Like we're all playing checkers and he's playing chess. This could be a move, because when you think about the way the chain of events and all this kind of stuff happens, there is a simple thing here where Bill Belichick had a conversation with someone at North Carolina, and someone involved in that process leaked this to somebody they know in the media. If you're North Carolina, it certainly makes your job look a little better. If you're somebody who's Bill Belichick, like maybe he has an agent, a lot of these coaches do, and he probably does. I'm foolish for even questioning that. Maybe his agent leaks that because they want to get that out and make Bill more attractive for some NFL jobs that right now are starting to open up before our eyes as we get down towards the end of the season. Like what's going on in Chicago, right? Like maybe that's a spot where, okay, like maybe we need to get going on this Bill Belichick thing before he takes the job with North Carolina. There's all kinds of stuff at play. And the one thing I know is that we don't know all the things that are going on, but it certainly is interesting to forecast and to take the evidence we have, right? Knowing college football, how we know it, knowing Bill Belichick, how we know it, knowing some of the other usual suspects in college football now, some of the coaches, like it is not beyond the realm of possibility to think that Bill Belichick could get a job in college and do a great job. Like it is not. It's actually very possible. So we'll be keeping an eye on that one. And I'm sure like in a day or two that could totally get shut down. But boy, is it interesting right now. Corey Dickman's going to come up. We're going to talk about football bets for this upcoming weekend. The Big 12 Championship. Here's something about the Big 12 Championship that I haven't discussed yet, but since we're getting into a betting segment with Corey, I'm going to bring it up. All my official hats are off, like as far as talking about this game. The show we did for the Big 12 aired on ESPN last night on ESPN2. It's funny. Think about that, by the way. If you're watching this, or if you live in Waco or Central Texas. So KWTX is owned by Gray Television, and so is Raycom Media. Raycom is a production company out of Charlotte that has put together college football broadcasts, bigger games, especially ACC games in that region of the country, for like 30 years. Like Raycom swung a very big stick back in the day. They still produce those games that are on for the Big 12, or not Big 12, on the CW network. And some of those ACC games you'll see are, I think sometimes it's actually a Big 10 game, but it's mostly ACC. And they are now under the umbrella of Gray Television, which owns KWTX and owns Raycom. So the Big 12 partners up with Raycom, and they say, we want to have a show that we want to produce. And Raycom says, okay, well, if we're going to produce a show, the company that owns us has a station in Waco, Texas, and we're going to produce the show out of that station. And the people at the Big 12 in Dallas are like, hey, that works for us. It's right up the road, 90 minutes from us. Like, go ahead. Like, if you can do it, like, let's see if we can do it. So we all kind of, the Big 12 and Raycom assembles their personnel, and I'm part of that mix. And we do a show, and the show is pretty good. And then all of a sudden, ESPN wants to put the show on the air because they're affiliated with the Big 12. When you think about, the football agreements and the live events contracts. So there's room for that, I'm sure, in the pie. And, last night, and it's still going to be running over the next few days, but like, this is kind of like inside baseball. Last night, there's a show all over the world on ESPN2 at 10 o'clock that was shot in a studio in Waco, Texas, which is pretty cool. We had Scotty's boy, Shahan Jayaraja, was on. It was me and Madison Hawk, and it was a good show by all counts. And if you haven't caught it yet, it'll keep running throughout the course of the weekend up until the game tomorrow morning. So I guess it's going to be running like today on all the different ESPN networks, and then tomorrow morning for a little bit. But yeah, pretty cool, man. Feather in the cap for Raycom and for KWTX and for knuckleheads like me to be a part of that deal. It's kind of cool. As far as the Big 12 championship is concerned, I am fearful that it is too early of a game for Arizona State. I think I've talked a little bit about that. I don't like that it is, let's see, it's a 10 o'clock start Pacific time for Arizona State, the way that their like body clocks are made up. And I don't think that helps. I'm not saying it's a death knell, but I do not think that type of thing helps for a team coming from Arizona to play that early in the morning. I do think it is beneficial for them that it's inside, it's on a fast track. I was talking to Matt Enzer, a PR guy from the Big 12 yesterday, and I was, of course, kicking around trying to be like the king of controversy. I was like, hey, like, what if the sun is coming through? Will Jerry pull curtains down or whatever? And he said, we've already looked at it, right? Like at that point in the day, that's not an issue. But it had been something that they had talked about. And also the folks from the Big 12, getting ready for this Big 12 championship. You're working with people from AT&T Stadium. You're working with people from the Cotton Bowl. They're actually heavily involved in that game because it's almost like a dress rehearsal for them, because the Cotton Bowl is like a semifinal bowl this year, right? So the Cotton Bowl is in lockstep with the people from AT&T and the Big 12. And they're like, the guy from the Big 12 was like, whoa, you want to talk like Rolls-Royce operation? Like, because a lot of times when you're with a league and you go on to a site, I mean, you really can't even imagine all the stuff that goes into it. Like, I go back to my days as like a PR coordinator, assistant or manager, or should I say assistant coordinator, then manager in the NBA. Could never make it up to director. Can you imagine why? It was all before I got sober. But on a game day, it's just like you're overwhelmed with responsibility. That's just a game day, a game you're playing at home. And if you take a game on the road to like a preseason game at like a neutral site, it gets crazy. There's just so many things in play. It's like herding cats. I mean, it's all the way down from getting the stat crew that will work the game, taken from this environment where they're always punching in stats at your home games in Philadelphia. And now we've got to get them to Atlantic City where we're having a preseason game. So anyways, the Big 12's in pretty good shape, letting me know last night that, man, it's been great to work with the AT&T and the AT&T Stadium folks and the folks with the Cotton Bowl. So I'm worried about Arizona State playing early. I don't think that's going to kill them. I think the fact that they play inside is helpful. And I know that Cam Scadaboo is somebody who we're going to be watching. I'm looking forward to him having a big day. But ultimately, at the end, I think it's going to be Iowa State. In the end, it's all about the mortgage bet, baby. And Corey Dickman has that and more. We're going to keep him accountable, too. Coming up with this week's picks on the Pete Souza Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network.
It's the Pete Souza Show. Sports, Pete.